did learn.
Nice.
Yeah. I was going to call this the anatomy of internet yet, but I won't do that, Michael. I'll call it either the anatomy of a client or an anatomy of a real estate transaction. So I thought I'd just go through a process. A friend of mine many years ago put an ad in one of the local newspapers. He's a real estate agent that I respect, one of the old school, and his ad was a day in the life of a realtor. And even though I had been a realtor for 4 or 5 years at that point, I found it fascinating to see how someone else does business. And I'm always curious how we all fill our days. So I just thought I'd take you through a sample deal just to give you some ideas, some of the ins and outs that go along with it. This particular transaction, or a series of transactions as it turns out, started with a simple internet hit. And it just came out of the blue about a listing I had in the East End, and the woman asked about the property, and she left her phone number. I called her. Turned out she lived just down the street from me. Turned out that I recognized the last name, asked her if she was related to such and such a person. Well, it's my daughter. The daughter is a person on a board of directors that I was on at the time called Access Community Capital Fund. So it's one of those, as we all know, the world gets smaller and smaller as we get older. So immediately there was a connection. Ask a few more questions, find out that she's asking about this particular property, but it's not appropriate for her. They're really looking for something else. So I drop off a little package about myself at the house later that morning, and then start thinking about what she was telling me, and discovered that what she really wants is something in a complex at the foot of our street, which is a condominium townhouse. So there was nothing available at that time. So I thought, rather than wait for something to become available, I drafted a letter, sent a letter to everybody in this complex, mentioning that I had somebody that wanted to buy and there was nothing for sale. Are you thinking of selling in the weeks or months to come? And lo and behold, I get a call a couple of days later from a young woman who is not quite ready to sell, but she's thinking of selling. So she invites me over, have a look at it, give her some ideas as to what it might be worth at that point. But and she's not ready. So a month or two goes by. I'm still keeping an eye out for this very first woman. And then I meet another client who shows some interest in something like this young woman's unit. So I call her back and I say, I have another person. Would you mind if we came through? So as it turns out, in the interim, she had become impregnated and had a boyfriend. They were planning on moving in together. So all of a sudden, she's motivated. So I bring this person through, and it's not quite appropriate, but the conversation progresses. She says she has a real estate agent, but it's nothing under contract. So in my little world, she doesn't really have a real estate agent. So I just keep thinking about who can I bring to show this unit. So over the next 10 days or so, I end up showing it 3 more times to other prospective buyers, and wouldn't you know, the very third person that I show it to really likes it. So she's just about to go to market with this other real estate agent, hasn't signed anything or anything, so but she would prefer not to. She's very pregnant, she's busy at work, etc. Rather not have the condo on the market. So I end up starting the negotiation between these two people. The second, my other client also has a house for sale, so this is a very exciting transaction for real estate agents. So originally, when I was going to talk about this, I was going to talk about that negotiation, because it was I look at it as a deal that, in a way, I manufactured. It wouldn't have been there had I not done all of these other things. And when we started negotiating that evening, the buyer was a single woman, and she had her boyfriend with her, and he, of course, knows more about real estate than anybody else. So I thought that could be a bit of a problem, and it was. It just ended up delaying the inevitable. But anyway, we were bantering back and forth. I go to one place, draft the offer, bring it to the other. This is dual agency, which means I'm technically representing both parties. It's just that my seller and her boyfriend are both lawyers, The buyer and her boyfriend aren't, but everyone's educated, they know the process, they've bought and sold before. So I really feel like I'm just providing customer service and trying to see if there's a common ground between the two. So this goes on for 3 or 4 hours. There's a lot of talking because there's 2 lawyers involved and there's a boyfriend who knows everything about real estate involved. So there's a lot of talking going on in the background. And meanwhile, I'm sitting there trying to sort of keep the conversation going, deal with objections, that sort of thing. The buyer's sitting at Allen's pub on the Danforth, so that's not helping because they're not drunk enough. If they were drunk enough, it probably would have helped the process. So 3 hours goes on. It's 11:30 at night. Everybody's tired. The seller and her boyfriend want to go to bed. They have to get up the next morning, and it looks like the thing is dead. I'm driving back to I'm on my way home, and it just strikes me, this is absolutely crazy. I have a very willing buyer who wants this unit. I have a very motivated seller. They're not apart by very much at all. And I just throw out this idea about, look, there's some appliances involved here. What if we fiddled with these appliances, and wouldn't you know it, all of a sudden there was a meeting of the minds. It was almost immediate. Both were on their way to bed. I just pulled them back in, and we had a deal. I raced over, got the initials, everything was done, and from that, everyone's happy. But from that, of course, I list and sell the buyer's house. The original call that I got from the internet hit is still in the picture. A unit comes available in the complex that the seller owned in. Turns out that's the unit they want. So, and you know many of these people, I'm sure. I think you did the mortgages on a couple of these. So the original hit ends up buying the unit in the complex that they like. So how many deals? That's four transactions. They have a big house to sell. They end up selling that house for over $200,000 over asking. Broke records for that particular house. And and this was maybe 3 years ago, something like that. So there's 5 or 6 deals just from that one internet hit. But I think the key is, and if there's a lesson here for business people in general, is just don't give up. Just keep the conversation going. Just if there's interested parties, if there's a meeting of the minds, if there's a common theme in any kind of business transaction, just keep it alive until everyone just says, you better get out of here, I'm going to shoot you. Because that's what they want. They want us to be in control. They want us to demonstrate that we know what we're talking about and that we're working really not in our interest, but we're working in their interest. And if it becomes the point where we're not working in their interest, believe me, they're going to let us know. But just to speak to your internet aversion, Michael, it's just another.
Not internet, please.
It's like I've discussed Yelp, like last time when I talked about Twitter and Yelp and all that kind of stuff. It's just another little tool that whether you're a caterer, an accountant, it's just another way to reach the world. It just so happens it's relatively inexpensive and difficult to maneuver sometimes, or perhaps understand. But so that's essentially the anatomy of a real estate transaction, or the anatomy of a hit, or the anatomy of a client, whatever you like. So thanks very much for listening and questions.
I have a question.
Yes, Andrew.
I'm glad that you brought this up because my question focuses around you acting as dual representation.
Yeah.
And potential conflict of interest, and I'm sure that everybody who gets in this situation, clients, bring this up with you. So how do you mitigate?
Yeah.
Some don't.
Some have no problem with it at all. They understand completely.
And never have a question.
Never an issue with it.
So I definitely would.
Yeah.
And I think that for clients, I would as well.
Yeah.
Clients of mine.
So we were in that situation with you when you were searching for your house.
That's right.
So I think it was the first offer you did. It was my listing.
That's right.
And you could probably speak to how I dealt with that. But basically, there are rules and regulations that I have to conform to. And they're spelled out very clearly in the Confirmation of Cooperation Agreement, which is I have to provide customer service, full disclosure, I can't influence unnecessarily what a buyer should or shouldn't do, or a seller should or shouldn't do. I can't disclose to the other party what the initial party might accept or offer. And if I conform to those rules, the rest of it is like this story. The rest of it is simply, as in this case, just keeping everybody, keeping it alive. Even if someone signs it back, get a counter offer, it's below what that client wants, and so that client changes it, sends it back. That client still isn't, I still get them to change it back to whatever. I've had signbacks go back and forth that are identical on a couple of occasions. So 2 offers come to the buyer at the same price, buyer sends it back, and they still find some way to get together. If there's a will, it's going to happen, if the agent's on the job. And if they're not on the job, I often see very young agents, they come in and they get a sign back and they decide for their client, oh, my client will never accept that, never accept that. So they take it and they go back, and of course I never see them again. So I got to get on the phone and say, what are you doing? Get this back here. My client just signed, it's just a negotiating thing, that's all. Come back here. So it's dual agency is very, very common. I don't know what percentage, but a lot of my listings I sell someone hires me to list their house. They're hiring me to sell their house. So I'm not going to wait for.
I can speak to it actually, because Duncan's my realtor, obviously, but all my referrals go to him, and I had a new client who was very fresh in the market, and this happened where actually you were able to sell the apartment she was in, and then help put her into a condo that you were selling. Is that correct?
No, I wasn't selling the condo she bought.
Oh, I thought you were.
No, I double-ended the condo
the
she
cell
was
selling and the one that she was buying, right?
So can I explain that?
Yeah,
I'll
please
just
go
go through this. So there was some concern with one of the. So the sellers were 2 daughters. It was an estate sale. 2 young girls, and they lived in different parts of the city. And as soon as I discovered that we were going to have to do this presentation on speakerphone, I thought we have a. Well, actually, one of them wasn't even available. It was going to have to be done by email. This dual agency it's simple, but if you're a very young person and you're not experienced with this kind of thing, it takes a little extra time to explain and answer questions because they have a lot of questions. Internet was just the wrong way for this to play out, and that's what happened. And so one of the I can't remember which one.
Regardless of who it was, one of them came back to me after it was done and expressed concern because they were my client. But I mean, my point, but I was able to obviously explain the situation clearly because I had worked with you and I understand how you work. And I mean, at the end of the day, I was like, listen, Duncan is very successful at what he does, and he would never want to compromise his reputation for whatever little percentage he was negotiating because you think he was squeezing out of you. You have to understand that that's why you want to deal with somebody with a very professional reputation because it's everything in your business. Yeah. And if somebody ever started to say Duncan Fremlin does business this way, and I don't have this confidence, then that would be critical to your success. And I was trying to explain, I've gone through the process, I know how he does business, so I'll speak from that point of view. But further than that, you have to understand that his reputation is far more important than whatever. And I think that's where clients don't understand. They're so involved in their own, so that they don't realize that your business is much, much larger than what you're doing for them.
My mistake was not addressing those issues because there were 3 offers on the condo. And I explained very clearly that the offer that my client was offering was so far superior to the other offers that even if I wasn't representing that person, that would be the offer you'd accept. It just so happened that I was able to get that buyer to come up to a level that was better than ever. That's all. I mean, but there were 2 parts to that. One was what you just explained. Yeah. The other. So anyway.
No, but it's just
now they love me.
Absolutely, absolutely, and everything's good on my end too, which is great, which is exactly what I want. But it's like a tricky situation. It was tricky going in. Yeah. I absolutely and when I handed it to you, it was tricky. Yeah. And it ended up being tricky for me later too, right? On a totally different end. Yeah. So I guess that's just speaking to Duncan's professionalism, some credibility for sure.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Do you do commercial buildings as well?
A little bit. I do storefront apartment buildings. Okay. Those are relatively easy to appraise but the more complex ones, the big commercial buildings, I have an agent I refer those to.
I'm in the printing industry, and assume that my business is booming, and I want to move to bigger unit within the
Yeah, the building I could sell, the business I wouldn't even try to sell, but the building I could sell,
Okay.
yes. If it's a piece of real estate,
Sell your chair.
I can sell you a chair. Thanks for your attention, everybody.
Thanks, Duncan.